Stuart, hi. I hope you can clear something up for me. In a task, before I do any task, I center the chakra below the navel. As I'm doing the task, it feels like I just focusing on the task, and am I losing the center?
Okay, well, so you answer that question, Tony?
I'm trying to.
Well, it's a very simple answer. I mean, the meditation is about building a system inside yourself that keeps you from doing exactly what you're doing. You can be in the world and you can be focused inside yourself exactly the same time. So it's no longer, if you get into your mind and you get into your emotions, then you're going to get swept away into the world. But if your focus is in the chakra below the navel, and you've developed a system and trained yourself to, stay focused there, then you can do any activity in life and still maintain your balance, your centeredness inside. You lose your balance as soon as you let your mind and your emotions get involved. And, and it's not like, we become brain dead, there's a higher intellect that can flow through your system. There's a logic that transcends the logic that exists in the human mind that can flow through you and allow you to deal with all these things, that you actively have to deal with in life without getting swept away in them, without allowing them to consume you. That's training, you understand? That's what these classes are, the 8 billionth time, that's what these classes are all about, getting that kind of training. Otherwise, I don't care, I don't care how smart you are, I don't care how much you meditate, it's all bullshit unless you get the kind of training I'm talking about. And you focus on it and you develop it and you use it to develop a chakra system that enables you to be in the world. We have to act in the world. Understand, human beings are gregarious, they're social creatures, we act and interact with other people all the time. It doesn't mean because we do that, we have to get swept away in it. And frankly, when you are centered below the navel, it's much easier to love people. You don't have all that static emotion that you got to deal with. You understand, all that mental gobbledygook that creeps in and turns most conversation into basically static on a radio. You have mastered your inner life. That is what these classes are for. That's all they're for. It's not, as I said earlier, a social club where we get together 4 times a week and we stare at each other, It has a purpose, and the purpose is to develop the kind of system that we need to, because we all interact with life. We all have to deal with life. We all have to earn a living. We have family, we have friends, we have all kinds of people that migrate towards us, and we have to be able to deal with all these things without getting swept away. And without the training, you understand, without developing that kind of inner life, you will get swept away. And these classes are about that. These classes are about exactly that, building an inner life that gives you the capacity to be in the world and to be free of the world, so that you're not trapped in illusion, in this dreamlike reality that we live in that's all around us. But when you look out at the world, you see that everything in life is a manifestation of God. And everything in life has a singular purpose to teach us how to go deeper inside ourselves. It's a simple answer, to a complicated thing that people have to do, because people, I mean, after these classes are over, I would say just about everybody gets swept away into their minds and this and that and the pressure and tensions that they have to deal with in their life. And they lose that balance. So one has to, it's like conditioning, It's like those experiments they did with, Pavlovian dogs, to train them that when the bell rings, they go and eat. When we are dealing with life, that in itself should be an example, because of the very powerful thing it is that we need to get training and balance in ourselves. Otherwise, I don't know. Because I once, mentioned to you, I remember I had a student who, I think I talked about this a couple of, but anyway, she was telling me that she would sit and meditate 3 and 4 hours a day in the morning, and then would go out on the streets. And as soon as she went out onto the street, she completely freaked out. So I said, well, what are you meditating? Well, I'm meditating on the heart chakra, the third eye, listening to my breathing. I said, yeah, all of that is important, but all of that is not enough if you don't have a center of balance inside yourself, if you're not grounded inside yourself. And I talk about this all the time, because it's at the very core of everything that Rudy taught. And it's at the very core of everything that I teach. And once you master that, then there's no problem with being in the world. Because you can deal with life without life dealing with you. And sure, things are going to always go wrong and there are going to be problems. But so what, because whatever happens in life is just simply an opportunity to grow, to learn. So I think the answer is, honestly, it's very basic. It's training. And people understand that, because if you want to be an artist, you got to get training. If you want to be a musician, if you want to be in business, they have apprenticeships to teach you how to learn how to be in business. Everything requires training. It's the only place that people don't think they need training when it comes to dealing with their own inner life. And that is the key to, the question that you asked, Tony, to mastering oneself. And it takes time, it takes a lot of time to build that kind of inner life. And it also teaches you patience. And it teaches you that you're only up against one person in this world, and that's yourself. You're not up against the politics, the economics, the money, the this. Nobody's really up against that. Because if you get free of yourself, all the rest of it will work. It'll just work somehow. And then it's a matter of doing it, not lip service doing it. I want. I mean, it's really through your activity, your actions in the world that you do it. What you're willing to do in order to get a spiritual life. I mean, when I saw what Rudy had to do to get a spirit, it was astonishing to me. And it really inspired me to do what I had to do to have a spiritual life. Does anyone else have a question?
So I'll ask you a question. Can you talk about accepting this process where there's still imbalance comes up and all this is happening during this process, acceptance of it without becoming complacent, in it, that space in between?
Well, look, Wendy, if you really accept what you have to do to have a spiritual life, you will never get complacent. There's no way, because what you're saying to yourself is, I want to attain the single most difficult thing there is to attain on this planet, that is spiritual enlightenment. There's nothing harder. It's easy to become a trillionaire than to get spiritual enlightenment. Just look in the eyes of Jeff Bezos and you'll see. It's easy to become a trillionaire than to get spiritual enlightenment. And if you make that commitment, you cannot be complacent. You have to do what is required by the universe in order for you to get this. And that is a lot of work on oneself, a lot of deep work on oneself. Complacency comes with just becoming familiar and getting bored and lethargic, and then you get complacent about your spiritual practice, or just doing it as in a robotic way, Well, I'll sit and do the double breathing, and but the need isn't there, because if the need is there, it's not just doing the double breathing exercise, it's taking it right to the source of all creative energy, opening that part of you that's connected to all creative energy. And to do that, there's always going to be an enormous amount of resistance. It'll come up. And there'll be complacency, because complacency is easy. It's a way of avoiding what you really need to do to have a spiritual life. So, all of these things are relevant to daily living. At the same time, they're things that we have to overcome if we truly want a spiritual life. And honestly, nobody should be in these classes if they don't want a spiritual life. These classes are too strong, they're too powerful, and that's what they're for. Sure, they help us in our social interactions and our money problems, our relationship problems. They help us overcome a lot of the neurosis and anxiety that most people live with. But beneath all of that, what they're doing is preparing us so that we can go beneath that to that place that truly will provide a spiritual life. If you're completely neurotic inside, there's no way you're going to have a spiritual life. You're so full of your own craziness that there's no possibility for the universe to enter you. So the whole purpose is to heal oneself of that level of living so that you can really go deep inside yourself. And you're not spending every day of your life just battling the craziness in your head, the anxiety and your emotional anxiety. And how can you get complacent if you want to do that? I remember once I was in Rudy's gallery and he asked me to clean a showcase that he had. That was pretty dirty. And I was very tired. I was complacent. I really didn't want to do it. I was like, and I did a really half-assed job of cleaning it. And he really got pissed off at me. And he said, I asked you to do this, and this is how you do it. This is what you do out of respect for me and, your teacher. And he really got pissed at me, I spent the next 2 hours cleaning every piece of dirt that was on that showcase. And I learned something amazing, that even in our daily, most mundane activities, we can't take anything for granted. We have to do whatever activities we do to the best of our possible ability to do them. And then you don't get complacent. For years I used to do business in India. You cannot get complacent doing business in India. You have to have hands in every pocket, and you have to have eyes all over your head when you do business, and you can't be complacent. You really have to be on your game when you're there, especially doing business. And I used to do a lot of that there. I would go there partially as spiritual pilgrimages and partially as a way of earning a living. And you couldn't get complacent because I'm telling you, you had to have a hand in every pocket. You had to be like Shiva with 30 arms and eyes in every part of your body, just to be conscious of what was going on. And as soon as you got any complacency, you would get robbed blind. I'm not kidding. And that's in daily living. Forget about a spiritual life. I mean, if you don't look both ways when you cross the street, you get hit by a car. If you're daydreaming and complacent and off in some netherworld, So all of this is consciousness of living in the world and getting free of the world. Being completely conscious while we live our lives every day. At the same time, being conscious of the connection we have with higher energy in the universe and understanding profoundly in ourselves that that is the pathway to freedom. And never getting complacent about that, really understanding how essential it is for not only your daily living, but for your spiritual evolution and growth. Otherwise, it's kind of like, I don't know, did you ever see that kind of B movie, The Invasion of the Body Snatchers? People mostly live that way. Their whole being is taken over by some force, which is in the brain that takes over, and they walk around like zombies. Just walk into downtown or whatever city you live in and look at the people walking past. Everybody's in their heads. Everybody is consumed by mental activity. And because that energy is so strong, people get complacent. And they lose the consciousness of what it means to live in the moment and to be completely conscious of how you're living your life. Does anyone else have a question you would like to ask?
Hi, Stuart. I just wanted to ask you about the example you used of cleaning that shelf for Rudy when you did it with more detail, when he went back and said, I'm going to do this now. Were you, while cleaning that, were you also in your center and did that the whole time?
I couldn't have been in my center.
Oh.
I was daydreaming.
No, I'm talking when you went back and did the good job, when you went back and did the more detailed.
Yes, then I got centered, I got balanced. I said, okay, this is sacred, this showcase. Right. It is a possession of my spiritual master. And if I'm going to clean it, I got to clean it so this freaking thing just sparkles. Okay. It can't be cleaned any better. And in order to do that, I couldn't be in my head daydreaming. I really had to do it. It was a great lesson for me,
So you were at the cleaning and the center at the same time?
Yes.
That's thank you.
You're welcome.
That is clear. That's clarity.
Yes. Otherwise, when I was first doing it, I was so much in, oh my God, I don't want to be here. Who needs to clean this freaking showcase and blah, 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 going on and on and on in my brain, And when he came and he said, you did a crummy job. I said, my God, this belongs to the person who I love more than anyone in the world, who gave me my life. How can I present him this? How can I present you in this meditation class anything but the best that I have to offer you? Can't do it. Can't do it. And if, in order to do it, I can't be putzing around in my brain, thinking and daydreaming and analyzing. And, you know, I got to be grounded and centered and let this spirit come through and channel that energy so that this class is the best that I can possibly do in this class. Otherwise, it's just bullshit, you know, it's just words. And I don't like just words. Words have to have a deeper meaning. They have to come from a deeper place. And they have to be nurturing and nourishing, just as the Shakti in the class has to be nurturing and nourishing. And in order to do it, I have to go to the deepest place of myself in order to make this work. Just as I had to go to that place to clean that showcase, you know? This is sacred. Every one of you is sacred. Rudy was my spiritual master. He was sacred. That showcase was sacred. It was in Rudy's gallery, for God's sake, and his possession. How could I treat it cheaply?
Stuart, I have a question. When we're sleeping and dreaming and all this anxieties and fears come out in your dreams, are we burning up tensions? And if not, is there some affirmation we can say to ourselves before we go to sleep to help us work on ourselves while we're sleeping?
Well, first of all, when all that stuff comes up in your dreams, it's just telling you what's inside you. You know, so you might not be able to work on this stuff in your dreams, but you're learning about the problems you have inside yourself. And then you can do something when you sit down and work on yourself to get stronger than all of those problems. You know, I mean, dreams are a kind of blessing because you're asleep, you're relaxed, and then it all comes up. You know, you find out what's buried in your belly, you know, when you dream at night, you find out what's, you know, all the problems you have that are blocking you and your growth. Then you can sit down and work on yourself and do something about it. You know, more than just analyzing your dreams. This dream energy is just energy. And it's energy that comes from deep inside a person. And that energy it's a very important thing to read. And then during your meditation, you really go deep inside. So I don't know, people keep leaving and coming back. That's good. You know, you go deep in your meditation and you do the thing I've been talking about probably since 1973. Build your chakra system, because that is the key to cleaning up your act. And the dreams are telling you this. You got to get a more developed chakra system so that you can get free of all that stuff. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask?
Hi, Stuart. Could you speak?
Just wait. Everybody try and sit still. If you're moving, you're looking around, it really disrupts the class. It's another 5 minutes. Please, if you have an itch, go to the third chakra. The itch will go away. I promise you. Does anyone have a question? Oh, go ahead, Paul. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Could you speak on the energy of love? When we meditate, I feel it permeate and it feels like it pushes everything out and it just feels warm and bubbly and loving. And it moves everything away and it fascinates me how it creates displacement. Could you talk about that energy?
Well, I just spent a half hour talking about that. Look, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it gets back to the same thing. Look, what you described is essential. You understand? In order for the heart to open and to be loved and to have that incredibly warm feeling in the center of your heart, you have to get out of the way. You have to be able to transform the blocks into, Shakti, into energy inside yourself. And, what you experience is great. So it's just telling you, hey, this is possible. It's possible to have this experience in my life. And it's possible to be able to live with that experience in my life. So I got to keep working, on myself, building that chakra system to get it strong enough so that can be a permanent reality for me. It's not that I only have it in meditation class, or the first 2 months when you fall in love with somebody, It's all the time. Whatever you're doing, you can have an open heart. But what's required is developing a system to be able to do it. So what your experience is telling you what the possibilities are. Now, you got to keep your mind from getting involved, your sexual energy from getting involved, your tension, your physical, aches and pains and all that, by developing a chakra system that's strong enough that no matter what is going on with you, you can still keep your heart open. That's nobility of soul. That's an extraordinary high level of being. And that's what every meditation class is, just another step trying to help everyone that's here to get to that state of being. I mean, in Hinduism, they call it Ananda, that state of bliss. And nobody's going to attain that until they build a system inside that's strong enough to do it. And it's not being holier than thou, walking around pretending you're spiritual. That's just bullshit. This is something that is so profound inside, you can't even describe it, frankly. You can only live with it.
So much, Stuart.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? I hope this is all clear, not so much clear in your heads, but clear how important it is for this all to become living experience. I mean, some of you are singers and you know that when you sing and you're really on your highest level of singing, it's a pure connection with something of a transcendental nature. The mind doesn't get involved, the emotions, it comes from a place so deep inside, that it really connects with that higher energy in the universe. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? Okay, well, again, I just feel very grateful to be able to be here and do this. And me slowly and gradually recognizing the sacred nature of everybody who's in my life. And to try to, nurture that in people so people can grow and build a connection in themselves with God, with higher energy. So bless you all and thank you. And there'll be a meditation on, what is today? Tuesday, Monday. What is today? Wednesday. I don't know anymore. Today is Wednesday. There'll be a meditation class tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all. So bless you. Have a wonderful
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Stuart.
You're the best.
Stuart.
Beautiful.
You're welcome.